Go live. Three, two, one. I think I'm live. Hey, everybody, welcome back to another one of our lunchtime live streams. I'm Jon Bobrow, creator of Blinks and CEO of Move38. And today on our live stream, I'm actually just going to switch over here. So we've got a special guest with us. Welcome to the live stream, Aaron.
Hey, thanks for having me. It's good to see you again, John.
Likewise. So I'm excited for today's live stream for a couple of reasons. One of which is, Aaron, you're well aware of what January 27th is.
Yes.
So
I'm super excited. Yeah, Global Game Jam is like one of my favorite events, and I'm just, even though it's remote, like I'm hyped to get back into that energy.
So for those of you who don't know what Global Game Jam is, I'll give a quick intro, which is every single year. I'm not sure. Do you know how long Global Game Jam has been running?
I don't know. I think it's like 5 or more years. I've only been for 3, but it's been a long time.
And so every single year in January, game jams are like hackathons, but for making games. And Global Game Jam is we're gonna secretly decide on a theme, and then everyone around the world, anybody who's interested in making games, whether you've made one before or not, is given that prompt and then has typically 48 hours to create a game. And not just do it alone, but usually it's the very first part of the game jam is make a team and then make a game and eat lots of pizza in the process.
That's right. Yeah, and I think that's kind of what sets Global Game Jam apart too, is that team making aspect. Right? Like a lot of game jams tend to happen online, and maybe you come in with a team or you find one on Discord or something. But Global Game Jam is a lot of really structured around making those local communities and meeting new people and trying to make games with people that you just met, which is a really awesome way to bring people together around this kind of activity.
And I feel like my first time attending a Global Game Jam, it's just like the energy in the space is just so amazing. And it's like, I never considered myself, like, I've been surrounded by games my whole life. I've always been excited and interested, but I never considered myself like a game designer. And so when I showed up at my first Global Game Jam, it was like, oh, this is cool. Like, you can't put a box around what game designer is, except for anybody could be a game designer, and anybody who shows up in that room instantly becomes one.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, totally. It's awesome, and being in those spaces really kind of opens your eyes for, or at least for me, right? Like there's a specific set of kinds of games and things that I'm into, and that is just like one slice, right, of the entire sort of like the broader what people like to do and people like to make. And being in that room with everyone making board games and crazy immersive experiences and co-op and shooters and multiplayer, whatever, single player story experiences, it's awesome to see like all the energy.
When you showed up to the Game Jam, and so we met at the Game Jam this last year.
That's right.
So in 2020, the very beginning, I can't believe that was actually that was a highlight. That was the highest high of 2020. And
the 5 we did in 2020.
That's right. I like to think of 2020 mostly encapsulated in the first 2 months of the year. So at the Game Jam, we set up Blinks at the New York site, which draws like, over 500, maybe it's closer to 700 game jammers. And you showed up to the Game Jam with the intent. You didn't know anything about Blinks. Like, you didn't intend to work with Blinks. So
not at all. Yeah.
What was that experience like?
Yeah, like I even come into that part's even like more, I don't know, intense for me, because I even come into game jams having prepared like, oh, I'm going to use such and such framework. Like I'm prepared to use these kinds of assets. Like I set up my workflow the week before because I just really love doing this thing over the weekend.
Cool. So you get like all your tools sharpened.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. I had a whole shelf of tools. They were all ready to go, polished and everything. And I still ended up dropping all of that for these.
That's awesome. Like I heard this. I didn't hear it straight from you, but I heard. I think Ishmael was just like, he was like, oh man, like Aaron came prepared to do this, and then like he's dropping it, and I don't even think on day one we were like getting we had brought like 10 developer kits and getting people set up, and like I think you came in the second morning and you're like, okay, get me set up.
Yeah, that's exactly how it happened. Like I had talked to because Ishmael's a good friend of mine, and I'd heard he'd like, oh, I joined a new company, so I want to talk to him about it. And I was like, that sounds interesting. Like, how many developer kits you have left? And I remember at the end of the second day, he's like, we have 2 left. And I was like, okay, cool, I'll keep that in mind. Right. And then I go home, I get started on my game, and I'm like, man, like this did not work for me. Like whatever I was working on, I was like, I was too ambitious or something. And I was thinking in the back of my mind, I hope they still have a developer kit when I get back. So I made sure, like I cut it off at like 1 a.m. I'm like, I'm getting up at a good time. I'm going to show up right at opening so no one takes any of these kits away. And I was like, yes, I got like the last one or something. I was like, yes.
So like that's rad, because I also feel like, so like what was, like you came into Blinks, you hadn't used them before, you hadn't programmed for them before. Like how long did it take you to get up and running? Like what was that like?
Yeah, that was, I mean, in some ways it kind of helped that I started on the second day because some people had set up their environments before and they could help me out. But in general, I mean, it wasn't that unlike things that I'd seen before. Like I've done a little bit of Arduino programming, and it was sort of like the same thing. Had to install an extra library or something like that, right? And then I could get going. And especially as someone who's like done a lot of just general programming, is like very comfortable. Like here's the documentation with an API. Here's a couple guides how to get set up, and I was like, all right, well let's do it. And especially like again, owing to Global Game Jam, like having Dan around to help out, and you were around to help out, just be like, hey, like what's going on here, or like where should I start? And then y'all can be like, okay, here's a couple links. That's all you need.
And so like, I feel like the thing that was so cool. So yeah, so this year it's going to be very different, but yeah. I'm curious. Like, I'm in some senses even more excited about this year's Global Game Jam, mostly because I feel like it's definitely going to be different. But I feel like I've been present in some like Discord forums and like spaces that it's like, wow, there's even like voices that wouldn't bubble up in a physical space get bubbled up. And also just the ability to kind of like work and share with a larger group of people is, I think, something that's going to be, we'll see how it goes, but I'm pretty excited about that. I feel like one of the things that stood out to me, I'm curious, and I feel like I should show the game that you and Spencer created, because so let's do a quick. So we just kind of
play remotely, but I think I can't stick my finger through the camera.
That's yeah. What's it? So we just kind of hopped right into this. I didn't even really give you a proper intro. Aaron is one of 2 creators of Reactor, which is one of my favorite sets for the Blinks game system. Oh, looks so good in the ube purple sushi roll.
I love this. When I got this and I was like, oh, it's purple? Like, I freaked out. I called Ishmael immediately. I was like, this is purple, dude.
I got so excited. I was actually going through some photos. I have like a Japanese cheesecake that was ube flavored.
Delicious.
Pictured next to my purple. So like, here, let me load up your game. I wonder what the.
I can talk through a little bit of the inspiration or the design, I guess, while you're doing that.
Please.
So Spencer and I we're good friends, and we were both at the game jam and decided to make something on Blinks together, and we were kind of like trying to come up with ideas, and one of the things we harkened back to was a card game that we really loved playing. Like, we used to play it a lot in college, and we still kind of whip it out anytime someone has a deck of cards. It's called Egyptian Rat Screw, which is kind of like, I don't even know how to. It's like a reaction-based game. People take turns placing cards down on the table, and when you see a certain sequence come up, you're supposed to slap your hand down, and the first person who slaps their hand down gets all the cards, and whoever holds all the cards at the end. So we set out sort of just to recreate that for Blinks and try to take advantage of some of the unique properties, I guess, of the platform. So while we were making it, someone came over and they were like, well, what what if you have your input like at the end, so it takes some time for it to get to the center, and that ended up being like the core of the game. We were like, oh, that's awesome, like that's great. So in Egyptian Rat Screw, the more cards you hold, you have a huge advantage, because you can just keep throwing down cards. You can lose, nothing happens. But in Reactor, if you hold a lot of cards, your chain is really long, so it takes a really long time for your input to reach the center, sort of like shuffler, which I guess we'll talk about in a second. And that ended up being like we just loved that. We were just like always like, oh well, what are the strategies around this? Like, and these comeback victories were like so common but so intense, and it was always so hard to like clutch out a victory. It was great. That was great.
I feel like there were always shouts and screams from your table of people, and it was just like, I used to love playing like some of my favorite card games growing up, where like just simple things like War, where it's just like it's such a simple mechanic, but like it just gets at this really nice, like, I don't know, everybody like friendly competitive drive.
Totally. Yeah, these like, I feel like there's something about, I don't know, story generation, like creating these moments of tension and then resolving them in different ways, right? I think a lot of these simple games have, because everyone understands what's happening, especially in War. Like, oh, this guy's deck is low, he's about to lose, what's going to happen? And then when it doesn't happen, everyone immediately gets like, well, something really just occurred. The spectators can all figure that out really quickly.
So I've got it set up for 3-player right now, because I think it demonstrates kind of something nice that you guys did. So I feel like it's also worth pointing out like where this game was after one day, and then where it was, like what changed to get it to ship.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, I think a big part was sort of like we had, I think maybe 90% of the game basically finished after the first day. We had set out like, okay, here are the mechanics we have. So we have this shuffler in the middle that shows like a number 1 to 3 and colors. I think it's green, yellow, red. And if you see the same number twice in a row, so we just saw 2 3s. That's like 3, 2, 3. Let's hope it happens again. 2, or the same color twice in a row, then you buzz in, and the first person to do that wins. And you can see the person John just buzzed in for himself, so his pathway turned green, and then everyone else had turned red, indicating that they were too late. But we had that after the first day, I think, and so we were basically just like, okay, well, we've got the game, like, let's see what happens when we put it in people's hands. And we got to really quickly just see, like, okay, well, these people want to do this. Like, people were like, what about more than 3? And we're like, okay, well, we got to put that in by tomorrow. And some people were, I just remember specifically, we watched the group play for like 15 minutes. They went back and forth for so long, and we were like, we got to do something about this too.
That's right. So like, I forget that, people were like, oh, if I want to play with more than 3 players, so then you added this support, you could play with up to 6 players, or you can branch it and have teams.
Yeah, because the way it works is we have this pathway that leads to the center blink. You sort of like bake the center blink that shows the colors, and you can build your pathway however you want. So it used to be that there wasn't anything special around the center blink, and if you kind of jammed all of them together, like you see on one side here, they would all count as the same input, and that was kind of the thing we needed to change to support all 6 people. But now if you have like, I think it's even like 2 sets is almost enough to play with 6 people. You can get a big group of people going in this kind of thing.
That's right. So here, I'm actually horrible at this game. I feel like I was beaten over and over and over again. But you were talking about like the rubber banding of the game. And so like, when I'm doing really bad and my partner Jamie is destroying me because her reaction times are so much better, she's like, oh man, this is so tough, when I'm like right next to there, and I'm just like watching her finger when she buzzes in. To like be like, oh, okay. Right. But then she realizes she's so far ahead of me, she can juke me by like, just like, oh, I'm just going to buzz in because I know he's just waiting for me to buzz in. And I've got all this padding. I got plenty to lose.
That's so awesome. There are a couple like really kind of unorthodox strategies, I guess, that appeared towards the end of the game jam. And that's one that I hadn't even thought of. Like, Spencer and I are the master cheaters. We like love coming up with stuff like that. But that's a really good one.
I thought that was. Oh, go ahead.
big degenerate well, it's not even degenerate, it's just weird and people don't understand it when it happens, is that you can see here, right, like it takes so long for that input to reach the blink. So like a lot of cases, if you play with a lot of blinks, you're at a massive disadvantage if you're winning, because you have this really, really long chain that you have to deal with, right? And there's the strategy you talked about is a great solution, right? If the other person's paying attention to your hand. But one of the things that I started doing is I just started randomly pressing. Like, because I know it takes so long, the blink at the end will probably have changed by the time my input gets there. So like 1 out of 3 times, I just get it right, and the other person can't do anything about it. So that kind of, those kinds of strategies have really helped or I don't know, just like cool. It was cool, like have this crazy emergent property of the system, you know.
And I feel like playing with you guys, it was just like, yeah, it was just like there's such good energy around this game, whereas just like, yeah. And then, well, actually, I want to talk about one other thing, because I was like, oh man, this game's already hard as is like this. And I remember the game started as, it was called Pay Up, right?
That's right.
And so like every time you'd beat me, because we played a lot, and I remember you beat me a lot, Aaron was just constantly going, pay up, pay up. And it was just like, okay, every time you just like exchange a blink. And I still like to say pay up every time I win in Reactor.
I think it was Dan who came up with that, but because we had designed that mechanic like, oh, if you lose, you should give your blink to the other person. But it was counterintuitive, because normally, you know, I don't know, just it was a weird thing to do. Like, you take the blink off and give it to the other person. We're like, how do we make this make sense? And that's when we like, okay, let's name the game Pay Up. And every time you win, you say pay up, and then the other person has to give you a thing. And it just kind of stuck. It was so satisfying. You're like, you buzz something in, you have a default thing to say, and then the other person would recognize, oh, I lost. Here's your prize.
But then you started to add even more things, because I think you and Spencer got so good at the game, you're like, but we want to add like another challenge and this was all in the span of 48 hours. Like, these things were all, so like you got to this level of the game, but then, explain what happens here when I pull one off.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so when you pull one, right now the way it works is when you pull a blink off, it kind of goes into this, like, I don't know, mystery state, unstable state. And sometimes it turns red and sometimes it turns green. And if it turns green, then the first person to put their hand on it gets to add it to their chain. And this is kind of like a callback to the original Egyptian rat screw. And it's nice for a bunch of reasons. One of them is like, if there's a bystander or a spectator who wants to play, they can watch for these blinks and take them from the players, and then all of a sudden they're in the game, which is awesome, because like there's just another level of stress. You know, it's not just the two players and the people watching and all this happening, where there can be a lot of stuff going on. But it also allows for the games to just be a little bit more predictable, where instead of these huge swings where someone's losing and it's one blink versus 7 blinks, when you lose, you put your blink off to the side, and it makes it, you know, end game scenarios can be like 1 blink to 4 blinks, which is a little bit more doable for the winning player.
Right. Yeah, I think actually I should switch over and show that, because I think when you've got one player who's right next to the what's the term you use? The shuffler.
The shuffler, yeah.
So like right next to the shuffler or the reactor, like it's so easy to click in once you see that like trail coming. So by having these ones turn red, by the end of the game, even if we start with like 18 blinks and 3 players, end game state might be down to like 12 blinks and 6 red off to the side, or 9 blinks and 9 red off to the side. Yeah. I really like how. So I feel like at Game Jam, like it was so clear that it was like, oh man, everybody's having a blast playing this. This doesn't look like anything else on the system. Like, this is definitely something that we've got to share with the world. And you know, this year going into the Game Jam, like we're, you know, in 2020, we published 15 games from the community. Which is like, we set out initially planning to launch 12 games in the year. And then, actually, yes, I said 15, but I think it might be 16. I think actually one of them was an intern project here at Move 38. So,
Oh, cool.
But
yeah, I think one of the nice things about, well, at least my experience with Reactor is that it was almost production ready outside of the game jam, right? Like, it wasn't like, oh, well, now we have to replace the assets, or like, oh, we got to clean this up. It's like, no, there's a small payload in terms of the code size. Like, the graphics, maybe you just add a little bit of animation, but otherwise it was like maybe a few days' work, really, at the end of the day. And then, now it's here it is. I have the blink right here.
And hold up the label. I'm like, I'm jealous of your set because, let's see, slick.
This set has the purple graph, so it's obviously the best one.
Believe it or not, the one I'm holding here, it's all shiny because this is a prototype.
Oh, yeah. It was like printed, and this is like,
that's actual production.
Cool.
So, like, it's whenever a game goes into library and we're like heavily playtesting it, I'll go ahead and just print one out, put packaging tape over the print so that it doesn't rub off, and then we'll add it to our library.
Right. Just to get that feel, I feel like one of the great things about this is that it feels like such a, it doesn't get updated. It's just I don't know how to say it. It's an artifact, So I think completing, as soon as you can complete that, I don't know, that connection where it's like, this is the piece that is the game, the better for feeling of like, completeness or goodness. I don't know how to describe that.
One of our forum members designed a 3D print to put your Blink in a stand, like little trophy stand.
Ooh.
And actually, I need to share an update to it on the forum, but I thought, well, maybe because there are magnets on the side, I can use one of the old batteries as a way for it to hold itself up. And so I modified the 3D print to slip an old battery in. And now I've got one game propped up on my desk at all times.
That's sweet. That's really awesome. That's a cool idea. And it reminds me too of that Jenga mini game people were playing with the blinks, where they're like, okay, let's just stack them up and see how high we can go before knocking it over.
That's we now actually in the Blinks game system. One of the games that was added is called Topplestones.
Oh.
And it's Jonathan West created this game using the coin flip, so there's no code changes. It's just a paper game. And then when you flip the coins, the gold coins have to go flat, the silver coins go vertical, and so you have this stacking game where you're stacking vertical, horizontal.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's so cool. Like, we've always talked about, like, well, I mean, these games are just communication systems. We can bend the rules and change them, but that's so, like, dramatic. That's like a great case study for just, like, just take a game and see if you can use it for something else.
So I feel like that's also, there's like, I feel like there's a few ways for people to participate in the game jam this year that is, like, you're a coder, so, like, for you, you're like, okay, I'm going to dig in.
Yeah,
and,
totally.
I feel like, Topplestones is something it's like, I don't actually need to write any code. I'm just going to work with the rule set that's already on Blinks. But then there's another element, which is our simulator, which now you can, without Blinks, work on the code and contribute, and then share that game with somebody who has Blinks to test it out.
Yeah, when I saw that, I was like pumped. I was like, oh, I think I'm gonna do a Blinks game again this year because the simulators changes everything.
I think we've already seen games pop up that were completely developed in the simulator.
Awesome. Nice.
And also we're gonna have this year. We've invited back members from our community to participate as mentors in the Global Game Jam. And so I think that's going to be super exciting. Everybody who's published a game or really active on the forum, just giving the opportunity to like help anybody in any state of their game.
Yeah. Yeah, I got that email and I was like, yeah, sign me up. Right. This is great. And
So,
I think it kind of owes that unique opportunity that we have this year where stuff is online. Because I'm in Michigan, right? So I wasn't going to show up to the New York location no matter what. But now, even like if you're in Europe and you decide to participate for Blink specifically, there's this massive other developers that can, help you out, and they're dedicated their time to it and that kind of thing.
Aaron, I want you as my mentor.
Got it.
How do I reserve? I think
right. I gotta make a sign up sheet.
Let's see. I'm checking the comments, so let's see. Okay. People are saying there needs to be a survey for the next colors of sushi rolls. We've now got five. We've now got 5 colors for sushi rolls.
5. What do I know? I know black, orange, purple. That's in my mind.
There's wasabi green.
Green, cool.
There's lava red, which only recently started shipping. That's for the Epic Adventure set.
Cool.
Let's see. Ooh.
When you drop a metallic one, I would buy that on its own.
Oh, like a mirrored surface?
Yeah, like a silver or a gold. Ooh.
Yeah. Okay.
That one on the survey.
We're putting it on the roadmap.
Awesome.
Well, what else? I'm curious. I feel like first of all, it's a blast to catch up with you. We got a chance to catch up a little bit before the stream, but I think 2021's a new year. You've published a game in 2020 on the game system. I've been hearing stuff back. So Community Set landed in people's hands in the fall of last year. And I know that Jamie, my partner, has obsessed with it. She's like, the community games are the best games. I was like, hey, take it easy. Give us a hint. What are some of the things? So you say, you're going to be helping people out in the game jam this year. Make another game. Who knows?
Spencer and I have been talking about what's our timeline? What are some ideas that we have? And I've got some stuff brewing.
Any teasers? Anything that you could share that? No obligation here. No obligation.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of a way to phrase this idea, but I've been playing around with the concept of Uno, I guess, or the I want to keep this sort of shuffler thing, but maybe turn a personal Blink into a hand of cards somehow, and figure out how to. There are some card games that we have been really enamored by, but not super satisfied by, Spencer and I, that are based around fighting games. I think it's called Fighting Card Game. One of them is something like that, and then Table Fighter, and one of them is called Yomi, and the idea of invisibly choosing what to do, and that I think that's something that I want to play around with because it's really simple in terms of setting it up on the system. These kind of single blink to blink communications are really simple. Mm-hmm. That's a thing that can really benefit from the tactility and kind of requires a lower number of blinks, which is a sort of a strange property of Reactors that it's really good with 2 sets, but with 1 set it's a little weak.
Right. And I think now Reactor, actually this is important to share. So at the end of 2020, we end of life these 6-packs specifically for the reason to help people start with the right number and then start to get these genre-specific sets. And so Reactor on March is going to be the new game packs. So we've already got a bunch of pre-orders for the game packs. But Reactor is part of a specific set that's competitive games. So
cool.
I think Reactor is among, I want to say also Bomb Brigade, and it's another head-to-head. So it's in the Showdown pack.
Is it Dark Ball?
It's not Dark Ball.
Maybe Astro, but Astro is I think part of the same.
Astro's part of the game system.
Yeah.
So, so anybody with Reactor going forward will at least have 12 blinks.
Oh, cool. Okay, I see.
So we wanted to set people up in a way where it's like, okay, cool. I got Reactor. Great. I've got enough to play a solid 3-player game.
Perfect. Yeah, perfect. Yeah, I mean, nothing against the 6. Like, especially if I play 6 just because it's so like quick and intense and that kind of short burst, right? Like, but that's definitely like a 1v1. Like, we're trying to fight over who gets the last slice of pizza kind of thing.
Yeah, and we were seeing that like most people have 18 or more blinks, and so it was like, okay, let's get you in, let's get you started at 9, and start to work your system upwards.
Nice.
One of the questions was, is it Mortals? Is Mortals the showdown? Man,
I can see.
Mortals does feels like a showdown game. It's either in the action pack or in the showdown pack. But awesome. And Jonas says he likes Yomi. He thinks he's got the most sets.
Well, keep a lookout. We've made a game based on ERS. We might be making a game based on Yomi.
Awesome. I'm looking forward to it. Aaron, it's a treat having you on the stream. I'm looking forward to seeing you at the Game Jam. Of course, if you're watching the stream, thanks to everybody who joined, Jeff, Lee, Mike, Jonas. It's just like, it's so good to see everybody on the live stream. If you're watching this, of course, after the fact, I know lots of you like to catch them in the evenings. Definitely join us in the Game Jam, January 27th through the 27th through, what is it, the 31st? It's a longer Game Jam.
Oh, I didn't know that.
So there's sort of a kickoff on Wednesday, but the official jam starts on Friday. And so, I think it's nice that you can kind of, I think the official team building is going to happen on Friday. But if people want to start their teams and stuff like that on Wednesday, nothing wrong with that either.
Totally.
So definitely sign up for the Game Jam. If you haven't subscribed to the YouTube channel, subscribe down below. And for all of you that haven't joined the Discord forum, Discord's where people are going to be actively sharing their latest updates with the games. We'll be playing games. Dan and I are going to be doing a live stream for live coding. And if we're going to be doing some live troubleshooting. So if people are like, oh man, I'm working on this thing, just in the same way that in the Game Jam you could pop into the room, we want to do it so that you can, hey, I've got something I'm trying to figure out how to do, and we'll work on it together. So,
yeah, that sounds great. And that community feedback too, while people are waiting in line, that sounds great.
I just want to sign up as a playtester. Like, I just want to playtest all the games.
Totally. That'd be so much fun. Well, thanks for having me, John. This has been a pleasure.
Thanks so much, Aaron. Great. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and we'll see you at Global Game Jam.
Awesome.
Peace.
Bye.